We are now in the year of Deltarune Chapters 3 and 4. I'm hoping for a Q1 or Q2 release, but you know, I think I'm just gonna stop trying to predict when this stuff is coming out because I can never seem to be able to get it right. But anyways, Deltarune Chapters 3 and 4 are coming out this year, and maybe even within the next couple months, so let's talk about getting your save files ready for these next chapters. For a game that's not even a third of the way playable, Deltarune has a lot of stuff. Lots of secret items, combinable accessories, bosses, encounters, dialogue choices, and as of Chapter 2, even a branching route that already looks to have severe effects on what's going to happen as the game progresses. There are certainly some things that are more important than others, so let's go over those first. Starting in Chapter 2, the game has begun to pay close attention to whether you decide to fight or spare enemies. In Chapter 1, it didn't really matter besides a slight change to the ending, but sparing or pacifying enemies in Chapter 2 causes them to become recruits, and fighting them causes you to lose them forever in exchange for becoming stronger. If you don't recruit everyone in Chapter 2, Queen gives you some pretty depressing dialogue, and the king, instead of engaging in a funny interaction with the queen, says this: "You left them behind, didn't you? Just as you left us." Also, this warning here telling us that saving the game in Castletown will remove any way of reloading and going back to the cyber world seems to be hinting that recruiting everyone is super important. It's pretty cliche at this point that being nice to everyone in these games results in everyone you showed mercy to coming to save you from some final boss, so I can imagine that this will be the eventual outcome of recruiting every enemy in Deltarune. And notice how they're called recruits, not friends or something like that, so it's not a bad guess to say that we're literally building an army. So you should definitely have a pacifist save where you have all of Chapter 2's recruits so that you can continue collecting recruits in Chapters 3 and 4. Doing this is also going to give you the most dialogue from Castletown, as it grows larger from all the stuff you're bringing back from each chapter's Dark World. Of course, with the pacifist route comes the genocide route, which I can only assume is going to be the continuation of the Snowgrave route from Chapter 2. The Snowgrave route did something that I don't think anyone expected, which was completely killing off a pretty major character. I'm very intrigued over how different the game is going to be with Berdly's absence, and with Noel's fear of us. Undertale certainly wasn't shy in completely shaking up the game due to a genocide route, so I'm sure it's going to be really interesting. So along with a save with all recruits, a Snowgrave route save is definitely worth having. However, doing the Snowgrave route makes you miss a lot of items. You don't get to visit both Spamton and Swatch's shops, which let you buy infinite +1 attack items or +3 defense items. So if you want to try and create the absolute best attack damage build for Chapter 3, you can fill your last save file with a playthrough where everything dies but you don't do Snowgrave. Something fun you can do in this run is to start the Snowgrave route but abort it once you've bought the Thorn Ring from Spamton. This will let you bring the Thorn Ring back to Castletown, something that you can't do in a true Snowgrave run because Noelle takes the ring with her after killing Berdly. So those can be the main objectives for all three of your Deltarune saves, but now let's start talking about some more specific things. Probably the most important thing you should be doing throughout your saves is defeating the secret bosses. Sham expresses immense interest in the shadow crystals dropped by both Jevil and Spamton Neo, telling us that if we collect more of them, he might be able to stitch together something incredible. He also assures us that defeating stronger adversaries like Jevil and Spamton will be, quote, worth it. As of the LTS testing patches that have come out recently, shadow crystal progress is now displayed on the chapter select screen, as if there needed to be any more evidence that these things are super important. If you have all 6 of them here, like I do, it means that you have both the shadow crystals in all 3 of your saves. I have a feeling that later on in the game, a chapter's secret boss is going to be barred behind the defeat of previous secret bosses, so you definitely want to make sure your saves have both chapter's secret bosses taken care of. Along with the shadow crystals, Jevil and Spamton also drop very powerful weapons or armor depending on how you treat them, which could definitely be useful against future secret fights if they start to get more difficult. As I discussed in my last 2 Deltarune videos, Chapter 5's secret boss fight is likely going to feature the Blue Soul, and if the fight is anything like Sans from Undertale, powerful weapons and armor are definitely going to be wanted. And speaking of powerful items, Itemsmith Malleus can combine some armors found in both chapters to create some pretty beastly equipment. The Twin Ribbon increases grazing range for TP by 56%, which is a pretty insane upgrade. It also gives +3 defense, something that can only otherwise be done by the Chainmail and Royal Pin, and is only outdone by Spamton's Steelmaker, which gives +5 defense. The Tension Bow is another pretty useful one, and has some synergy with the Twin Ribbon by increasing TP gain by 10%. This one is actually kind of tricky to obtain, since it's crafted with the Tension Bit, a consumable item that can very easily be spent without a second thought. For the Snowgrave and or attack saves, the Spike Band is the only armor piece in the game besides Jevil's Tail that gives +2 attack. So along with the secret bosses items, these are also some pretty good ones outside of that you might want to try and get. Something interesting about Malleus's crafting menu is that it contains an unobtainable item called the Twisted Sword. The ingredients for it are really interesting: the Thorn Ring, and an item that seems to have something to do with the shadow crystals called the Pure Crystal. This weapon does 4 times the damage of the current best weapon for Chris, and is basically just another reason to get the Thorn Ring in a Snowgrave and or kill save. The eggs are another mysterious key item that are definitely worth grabbing for your saves. These rooms, with the Man standing behind the tree are by far the most unsettling and also intriguing spaces in the game. They're also just really obscure and hard to find, and their reward of eggs is not any less confusing than any other part of it. Regardless, we know from interacting with Temmie's egg at the end of chapter 2 that the game is now keeping track of how many eggs we've collected. The flavor text of the egg is also really cheeky. Not too important, but not too unimportant. I think they're definitely worth picking up just to see what happens. By sparing enemies over and over, you can get as many dark dollars as you want. In chapter 2, there's also some items like the silver cards and the deal maker that boost the amount of money that you earn. It might be a good idea to grind up a lot of dark money, just in case there's an expensive item like Temmie armor from Undertale. And speaking of money, the glow shards from chapters 1 and 2 are items that increase in sell value per chapter, so you probably want to pick those up. There's some interactions, especially in the hometown bits at the end of both chapters, that you should definitely remember not to miss. It seems like there's quite a few questlines being started here that might be soft-locked if not initiated in the first few chapters, so let's go over all the important ones. At the beginning of chapter 2, you can steal $5 from Azrael's drawer, adding to the 2 you have by default. The finishing touch to a Snowgrave route that will solidify Noelle's fear of us is done by visiting the hospital and engaging in this creepy interaction with her. For added effect, you can wear her watch into this cutscene, which will add some different dialogue. You can store your eggs in Asgore's fridge in chapter 1 and Santa's shop in chapter 2. Not really sure why, but you might as well. Talking to Undyne in chapter 2 lets the dog burglars out of their cell, and the box of heart candy that Undyne gives you should probably be given to Alphys to advance that questline. Or, in another save, you can sell it to Sans for 5 more Light World dollars, which will bring you up to 12 with Azrael's money. By the way, I'm assuming that we might be able to spend this Light World money in the festival, which I think is going to happen in chapters 4 or 5. Onion San is on the case about the music he's been hearing under the water, so be sure to speak to him in both chapters and don't accidentally offend him or he'll disappear forever. Establish a relationship with Sans and keep egging him on to show us Papyrus. Talking to Mettaton in both chapters gets him to ask us to bring him something entertaining. There's also the stuff that has to do with Toriel and Asgore, the flowers that you can give to Toriel in chapter 1, and this cutscene in Sans' shop in chapter 2. This one in particular keys Suzy in on the drama between Chris's parents, which we know that she comments on in chapter 4. Obviously, there's a lot of small things that you can do that's going to change small bits of dialogue and stuff in the next chapters, but there's just way too much of this stuff even between chapters 1 and 2 already, so I wouldn't worry about too much of it. Missing some of it just means that we're all going to be finding different things in the next chapters, and that's kinda cool. In my save, something I've been trying to do is to get absolutely every single unique armor and weapon possible. This item combination system has just really intrigued me, and my Terraria instinct makes me want to just hoard everything just in case it becomes combinable at some point. I'm really hoping that late into the game, there will be some crazy combinations like Zenith from Terraria that just combine everything. Also, because of the tension bow and armor that used a random consumable item to create, I've also been trying to get every consumable item. So that's basically everything that you should do to be prepared for the next chapters of Deltarune. At least in all recruits in a Snowgrave save, shadow crystals, eggs, money if you want, interactions in hometown, and collect items for future secret bosses and for possible combinations. Now I want to talk about what you should be looking out for when playing the next few chapters. In your recruit save, you should obviously keep recruiting. Since chapter 2 is only the first chapter where you could recruit enemies, I can only assume that it's going to get a bit trickier to get every recruit in a chapter from here on out. Be sure to not fight the final boss of the chapter before you've gotten all the recruits, and remember that you can use save points to monitor your progress. Look for those secret bosses, backtrack, talk to everyone, look for secret areas, and explore every path. So far, it seems like the secret bosses are always going to be hidden somewhere in the final area, and you'll have to backtrack using the magical doors to find the key to them. In a Snowgrave save, you should put even more effort into looking for the way to continue it, since doing the Snowgrave route in chapter 2 is very convoluted. I'm not sure whether now that you've put it in motion if the game is going to start guiding you through it, kinda like Undertale did with its genocide route, but if not, you're gonna have to be very observant and experimental. Pay attention to any spells that new party members have, and see if they might work in continuing the route, like Noelle's Ice Shock from chapter 2. And who knows, the Snowgrave route might not even continue in chapter 3, since neither Birdly or Noelle are going to be involved with this chapter as far as we can tell. However, if I had to guess, I'd say that it's probable that the Snowgrave route is going to kill off one major character from each chapter, starting with Birdly in chapter 2, but I mean, who really knows? Look for the next eggs in chapters 3 and 4. To know where the room in between is, if it doesn't tell you like it did in chapter 2, pay attention to if the music restarts when entering the next room. If it does, enter and exit the room like crazy until you find the egg room. If you get any new party members, whether it's Undyne, Napstablook, Toriel, or somebody else in chapter 3, and whoever it may be in chapter 4, steal their stuff before they run away with it. The next time you make it back to the Light World, make sure to go back to Onion San and see what new dialogue he has, and find Sans to see if we're able to meet Papyrus yet. Basically, just make sure to interact with everyone again, since there's so many important things in Hometown. As I mentioned earlier, Mettaton specifically requested that we bring him something entertaining for the next day. This is clearly going to be something from chapter 3, the TV or entertainment world, so be on the lookout for something that you might be able to bring out of the Dark World for Mettaton. Finally, Malleus's crafting menu is most definitely going to be larger by the time we come back to him after Chapter 3 and after Chapter 4, so if you care about getting powerful weapons and armor, just try and collect everything you can from both of these chapters, and maybe don't use any tension-related items. Anything else? Did I miss anything? God, you guys can probably just tell how excited I am for this game, right? And it's funny, because even after we get these next 2 chapters, we're still gonna have to wait for the final 3. By the way, if you enjoy this style of video and want to see more, it would mean a lot to me if you could press that subscribe button. I'm not entirely sure if I'll be making another Deltarune video before the next chapters, but I can promise you that once they come out, there's gonna be some more Deltarune content here. Alright, that's it from me. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you later.